As the speaker is apparently. Will the General Assembly please come to order? This joint assembly is convened pursuant to the provisions of JRH 8, which the clerk shall now read.
Resolution providing for an election to fill a vacancy in the office of Sergeant at Arms. Whereas Sergeant at Arms Janet Miller has announced her retirement and has provided a retirement date of Friday, March 1, 2024, which will cause a vacancy in the office on that date. And whereas 2 VSA Section 11 provides that the Joint Assembly shall fill a vacancy in office existing or occurring while it is in session, where the incumbent is by law elected by the General Assembly. And such an officer so elected shall hold the respective office during the unexpired term. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the two houses meet in joint assembly on Friday, March 1 at 10 o'clock and 30 minutes in the forenoon to elect a Sergeant at Arms. In case election of such officer shall not be made on that day, the two houses shall meet in joint assembly at 10 o'clock and 30 minutes in the forenoon on each succeeding day, Saturdays and Sundays excepted, and proceed in such election until such officer is elected.
Now, pursuant to our Constitution and statutes, we are assembled here today in joint assembly for the election of a Sergeant at Arms. With respect to the election of this officer, if a contest exists, then the voting must be done by written ballot. This mandate is set forth in Title II, VSA Section 12, and in Joint Rule 10A. The chair now calls to the attention of the Joint Assembly the text of Joint Rule 10, which applies to elections held by this assembly, which in part provides as follows. Whenever a joint assembly is required to elect one or more persons to any office, the voting shall be by ballot, except that if there is only one candidate for any office. And if there is no objection, the chair may put the question to the joint assembly by voice vote. Subsection C, election to any office is by a majority of the vote cast, exclusive of spoiled and blank ballots. For the purposes of this joint assembly, all nominations for this office will be received by the chair prior to voting and presented in alphabetical order. There will be only one nominating speech of not more than 3 minutes, and not more than 2 seconding speeches of not more than 1 minute each for each nominee. We have one election today to elect the Sergeant at Arms. For the election of a Sergeant at Arms, as there is a contest, the election shall be by ballot. With that, we will need tellers, and the chair will now appoint those tellers. Senator Ruth Hardy of Addison District as chief teller, Senator Tanya Vyhovsky of Chittenden Central District, Senator Robert Norris of Franklin District, Representative Melanie Carpenter, the member from Hyde Park, Representative Kenneth Gosselin, the member from Northfield, Representative Elizabeth Burrows, the member from West Windsor, and Representative Troy Hedrick, the member from Burlington. We shall now proceed to the election of a Sergeant at Arms. Are there any nominations for the office of Sergeant at Arms? The chair would like to recognize the senator from Essex, Senator Ingalls. Do we have a microphone, or should he go to the floor? I believe we do have a microphone working its way here.
Today we gather the House and Senate to perform a very important duty, a duty that is not taken lightly. We come here today, united as a body, to elect our next Sergeant of Arms. We are fortunate because we can do no wrong. Both candidates are uniquely and highly qualified. I'm honored to have been asked to speak to you today about the candidate I'm supporting. Since 2017, this candidate has continuously been at our beckoning and call we do. Whenever there is an important meeting that needs to happen, we call. Whenever we get frustrated with our computers, we call. Whenever we are trying to just simply put in our time to get paid and are having nothing but problems, usually because of our errors, we call. In all hours, at any time, we call, email, or text our frustrations, needs, or concerns, and this person shows up. A calming voice, a reassuring smile, a confident demeanor, then all is better in our world. This candidate has a long history of public service, helping others first as part of their DNA. As a current director of legislative operations, our capabilities to function through the most difficult period of our times, the pandemic, was made easier because of this person's work. Whoever thought that the word Zoom would be such an important word in our lives? This candidate did that, setting up the systems of communications that for the most part has worked flawlessly was no easy task. In 2005, in Lisbon, New Hampshire, this candidate set up the Girls and Boys Club that is still going strong today. This candidate was Director of Security for the Vermont Lottery from 2012 to 2017 and was instrumental in developing security strategies that are still being used today. This candidate has been a Scoutmaster in Barrie since 2018, working with youth to help develop their strategies for a better world. But for 20 years, this candidate served our country in the U.S. Army Reserves, retiring in 2016 after 3 combat deployments. Being in harm's way is something that most of us will never experience. The idea that severe bodily harm or possible death could come upon us is unimaginable. This candidate lived that and came out as a better person. With all the threats we have in the world, with all that can go wrong in a blink of an eye, this service, this experience, this added layer of security, the protection for this building, the people that visit it, or the people that work in it, is what puts this candidate over the top. As a new Sergeant of Arms, security should be seamless, automatic, responsive, helpful, and maybe even a bit invisible until that moment is needed. I trust this candidate with that task. As I've started out, both candidates are uniquely qualified. Both are capable to perform the day-to-day operations that we so depend on to function, to do our job to the best of our abilities. But I strongly believe that one is better qualified to keep us all safe should that day come. Please elect Mike Ferrant as our next Sergeant of Arms.
Now, the senator from Essex has moved that Mike Ferrant of Williamstown be elected Sergeant at Arms. Is there a second to the nomination? The chair would like to recognize the representative from Dover, Representative Sibilia.
Mr. President, it is an honor to second the nomination of Mike Ferrant to be the next Sergeant at Arms for the Vermont General Assembly. Many of us have had the pleasure of working with Mike for 8 years, witnessing his unwavering dedication to public service. My first opportunity to work together with Mike was as the first committee assistant for the new Energy and Technology Committee. With our new committee, our new chair, and our new committee assistant all crammed into a very tiny room on the 4th floor, we found many opportunities for adventure and learning. Whether it was how to keep a path open to the door as our meeting room regularly filled up with too many, trying to figure out how to get our bills out and to the clerk, Mike handled each incident effectively and with calm reassurance. It became clear to me that Mike sees his role here as true service, a philosophy that aligns with his life's work, which we've heard about. Serving in a supporting role to the Vermont legislature and Vermont's citizens is no easy feat, especially with limited staff. Yet Mike manages his team and committee assistants with ease, never giving outward indication of the challenges this job entails. His professionalism, his hard work, and deep sense of responsibility are visible in every task he undertakes. As we heard, a real test of Mike's capabilities came during the unprecedented times of the COVID-19 pandemic, when our operations had to move quickly online. In an instant, Mike demonstrated both his resilience and adaptability, ensuring that the essential functions of our legislature were able to continue. His calm and composed demeanor under pressure has showcased the qualities that we need in our next Sergeant at Arms. Mike Ferrant embodies the spirit of public service, and we are fortunate to have worked alongside him throughout the years. While we have 2 excellent candidates to choose from, I ask you all to join me in voting for Mike Ferrant as our next Sergeant at Arms. His commitment to this body, his professionalism, and his tireless work ethic make him an ideal candidate for this important role.
Now, the motion has been made and seconded that Mike Ferrant of Williamstown be elected Sergeant at Arms. Are there any other nominations? The chair would like to recognize Representative from Virgins, Representative Lanfer.
Mr. President, Madam Speaker, members of the General Assembly, it is my great honor to nominate Agatha Kessler for the position of Sergeant at Arms for the Vermont State House. We are lucky to have two great candidates, both of whom are known to the institution and have done great work for the General Assembly. However, this is an election, something we all know something about. And as difficult as it is, we must make a choice based on qualifications and best fit for the role. Agatha's vast experience in this building, experience with state government, and her humility, kindness, and diplomatic nature sets her apart as an outstanding candidate for this important role. I first met Agatha when I took my position as a legislator in 2009. She exuded warmth and welcome throughout the halls of the State House. She served in various capacities: committee assistant supervisor, supervisor of drafting operations, supervisor of committee services. These positions required significant collaboration with IT, Legal Affairs, the Secretary's Office, Speaker's Office, House Clerk, Sergeant at Arms, Chief Finance, Fiscal Office, Legislative Council, Capitol Police, State Curator, and the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services. In 2017, after 10 years in the State House, Agatha left to become the Health Policy Director of the Green Mountain Care Board. Her duties involved planning, coordination, and research for the board. She spent 3 years with the board before moving to become Deputy Director of the Office of Professional Regulation. In this position, which she currently holds, she oversees all the administrative services, including personnel, IT, budget, facility management, and the general support to the licensing and enforcement functions of the office. It has been several bienniums since Agatha worked in the State House. Because of this, many of our members do not have firsthand experience of Agatha's formidable organizational abilities and interpersonal attributes. Her work history mirrors the types of skills required by the job of Sergeant at Arms: managing a building, the Capitol Police, legislators, the public, events, and unexpected situations, security, and much more. And as much as she is competent in high-stakes situations, she is also calm and confident. Her interpersonal skills are outstanding. She has a warm and engaging personality. She exhibits a genuine interest in each person she encounters. She is a gifted problem solver, an excellent listener, and a natural leader. She brings kindness and a positive attitude to every situation and encounter. As Sergeant at Arms, Agatha would be a gracious and welcoming presence for the public and a respectful manager of the State House for the members of the General Assembly and the public. Agatha has received stellar recommendations from scores of people who have worked with her: former legislators, the former Speaker of the House, the former and current Secretaries of State, former Commissioner of Health, former President Pro Tem of the Senate, former head of the Green Mountain Care Board, and retired head of the Joint Fiscal Office, and current employees of the Office of Professional Regulation. Agatha would make an exceptional Sergeant at Arms. With her deep knowledge of the workings of the State House, she could be on the job, excelling on the job on day one. With her deep integrity and respect for the institution of the State House, she would be a worthy and very effective leader. It is with my highest recommendation that I ask you to join me in voting for Agatha for Sergeant at Arms.
Now, the representative from Virgins has moved that Agatha Kessler of Barrytown be elected Sergeant at Arms. Is there a second to the nomination? The chair would like to recognize the member from Coventry, Representative Marcotte.
Mr. President, it's an honor and privilege that I rise to second the nomination of Agatha Kessler as our next Sergeant at Arms for our Vermont State House. I have known Agatha from the time she joined our Legislative Council in 2009. In those 15 years of Agatha's public service, I can personally tell you that I have found that Agatha is a person of extreme integrity who has always treated each one of us, each member, each staff person, each member of the public with the utmost respect. Agatha's cheerful approach to nonpartisan, always doing her very best to help solve anyone's problem and to do her very best to answer any questions anyone may have. Agatha has a deep respect for this institution, and I can tell you from my experience as a chair and vice chair, she served to support for 8 years the work of all committees, the committee chairs, vice chairs, and committee assistants. Agatha is intelligent, hardworking, and humble. And she only has the very best interests of us in mind, all Vermonters, all visitors, and this institution. Agatha will strive to continue Janet's great work as Sergeant at Arms and will work at creating her own legacy as she always has done in her role as a public servant. Please join me in voting for Agatha Kessler as our next Sergeant at Arms.
Now, the motion has been made and seconded that Agatha Kessler of Barrytown be elected Sergeant at Arms. Are there any other nominations? There being no other nominations, the chair declares that the nominations are closed. Accordingly, we have 2 names placed in nomination on the ballot for Sergeant at Arms. There will be 2 names on the ballot as follows: Mike Ferrant of Williamstown and Agatha Kessler of Barrytown. Is there any debate with respect to these nominees? If not, we shall proceed to vote. Insofar as they are applicable, the Senate rules apply. No representative or senator may be absent from this joint assembly unless sick or otherwise necessarily detained. Upon being called to order, every representative and senator shall be seated. It is the duty of each representative and senator to vote unless excused by this joint assembly or unless they are directly or immediately interested in the question being voted on. You are to remain seated while the tellers distribute the ballots. If a member or senator is not seated, no ballot will be placed at the member or senator's desk or seat. You are to remain seated during voting and while the ballots are being collected by the tellers. There is to be no milling about in the chamber during the counting of the ballots. If you are requested to remain in your seats during the counting of the ballots until it is necessary to step out of the chamber. If you leave the chamber during the counting of the ballots, you will not be permitted to re-enter the chamber until the counting of the ballots has been completed. The tellers, who were named earlier, are now instructed to gather in the well of the House to distribute the official ballot to the members and the senators of the Joint Assembly for the purpose of voting. Could I call the General Assembly to order for just a moment? Would the General Assembly please come to order for a moment? I would just like to check that everybody who is supposed to have a ballot has a ballot, because there was a slight distribution issue. We have some in the back. Secretary Bloomer and Senator Hardy, there are some folks without ballots. Please raise your hand if you don't have a ballot.
A point of inquiry, Mr. President.
Representative from
St. Albans City.
St. Albans, yes.
There is a line that says attest at the bottom of each ballot. Could you give instructions for the members on whether or not they need to put anything in that space?
Thank you for the question. One moment. Senate, please, General Assembly, please, so I can hear. Got it. They should not. Mr. Representative, thank you for the inquiry. The attest is actually already signed by the Secretary of State, if you see in somewhat faint on the right-hand side. So that's the attestation of the Secretary of State that the ballots are accurate. However, if anybody has accidentally signed their ballot already, we can replace that with a blank ballot, because the ballots are, of course, anonymous votes, just as many other votes would be. So if anybody needs a replacement ballot, please let us know now. Thank you. Would the tellers please collect the ballots? General Assembly will please come to order. We do have the results of the balloting. Before I announce the results of the balloting, I would like to inform the General Assembly that the ballots were counted twice. To be sure, the results are as follows. The total number of ballots cast were 166. The necessary number to succeed for majority is 84. The votes cast for Mike Ferrant are 82, and for Agatha Kessler, 84. Agatha Kessler, having received a majority of the total votes cast, Representative.
May I ask for a brief recess?
The representative from Dover has asked for a brief recess, which is within the rules of the General Assembly. We'll declare a brief recess. I'm getting better at that. Representative from Dover.
Mr. President, point of inquiry.
What
The
is the point
vote
of-
was very close. What is the process for a reconsideration?
Representative from Dover, at this point, a motion could be made by someone who attests that they voted with the majority, that they would like to reconsider their vote, in which case there would be a recount of the results. Excuse me, there would be I apologize, there would be a vote, a voice vote, unless a roll call is requested, for whether there would be a reconsideration. If that were successful, then there would be another round of voting. It would not be recounted, it was counted twice, but we would go through the process of voting again.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So I'll repeat the results of the vote. And if someone wants to make such a motion, they would need to make it before I gavel out the General Assembly. Agatha Kessler, having received a majority of the total votes cast, is hereby declared Sergeant at Arms for a term to February 20th, 2025, and until their successor is elected and has qualified. There being no further business, I do hereby declare this joint assembly dissolved.